CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, anti-Trump protesters taking to the streets again tonight in cities all across the country. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. The president-elect going to Washington on the first full day of his new political life, meeting for 90 minutes with President Obama in the Oval Office.
My number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
Donald Trump telling reporters and the American people that he has great respect for President Obama and will seek his counsel.
So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
We're going to begin tonight with those anti-Trump protests. CNN's Dan Simon is in Oakland, California. Ana Cabrera is in Denver. I want to begin with Ana right now. Ana, it's, his first day in office, and you have his first day visiting the Oval Office with the president, and you have these protesters out on the streets. What's going on?
Well, Don, we are among thousands of people here in downtown Denver, right at the state capitol building right now. They've been out here for a couple of hours. We actually walked with them as they marched through several blocks, shutting down multiple streets in downtown Denver during rush hour. One thing that has really stood out to me are chants like this. They have been peaceful. United we stand, they're saying. A lot of signs that you can see, people who have a lot to say, and they're angry about this presidential election result. They feel afraid, they feel hurt. We've heard from everybody from women who have felt offended to chants about welcoming refugees into our country to people who have said "Si se puede," chants about Black Lives Matter. Really, every group that has been offended by some of the rhetoric we heard during the campaign by Donald Trump has come out to make a stand, to send a message of unity among the folks here and acceptance and compassion. And we've been seeing folks from all walks of life, from children to elderly, from all colors, all races, all different backgrounds who have a message, again, but united in their message of coming together and accepting each other. And they hope that their message will get through to the president-elect and the future administration. They say they want change, and they want to do this in a peaceful way. It's been very peaceful out here, Don, but a lot of passion. Back to you.
And they are a loud bunch out there. Stand by, Ana Cabrera in Denver. I want to get to Oakland now and Dan Simon. Dan, what's happening where you are?
Hey, Don, the first stage of grief is shock and denial, and that's how these people are feeling. And in a sense, they are mourning over the result of this election. And so they are coming together with like-minded people to hug, in some cases cry. They're hearing from speakers, they're holding signs, they're chanting anti-Trump slogans. This here is the organizer of this anti-Trump rally. I would say there's probably 400 or 500 people here. This is Kat Brooks. Explain to me why you wanted to put this together tonight.
Sure. So this is the second night of action that we've had in response to Trump being elected the President of the United States. We really thought that it was important to have a place for community to come together, for like-minded folks to come together, black folks, brown folks, poor folks, to express their rage, to express their anger, but more importantly, to gel together as a community as we prepare to organize for what it means to survive as people of color in a country that's run by Donald Trump.
So the election has happened. The result is in stone. What do you do with this anger that you have?
We organize. We channel that. It's not just anger. People have a passion. People have fear. People also have a belief that it doesn't have to be this way. There are people here that are outrightly saying he's not our president and we don't accept the type of world that his presidency is going to create. But that can't just be empty rhetoric. That can't just be bodies in the streets. That's got to be funneling this energy into organizing and organizations.
And do you think that'll continue beyond these first few days?
Absolutely, and I think it'll continue across the country, right? I mean, people that are out here that are organizing a lot of these protests, they're not just being reactionary. These are people that have committed their lives to struggling for social justice, that are tied to organizations, that are tied to campaigns, that are tied to agendas for social justice. And our job across the country is to funnel the energy of people that may have just been awoken, right, to the fact that these are the realities of America into some direct, hardcore organizing campaigns.
Okay, one more quick question. Last night, there was a little bit of violence in Oakland. I liken that more to opportunists people who aren't associated with this movement. You would agree with that? You think we're in for a nonviolent evening?
I have no crystal ball. I have no way of predicting how people are going to express their rage. What I do know is that 7,000 people took to the streets last night. There were only 30 arrests, which means that 6,970 people marched peacefully through these streets. And I expect that to happen again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kat. I appreciate it. Don, we'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll keep an eye on all these protests happening across the country throughout this broadcast. His first full day as president-elect, Donald Trump seized control of his Twitter account after visiting the White House. He said this, just had a very open and successful presidential election. Now professional protesters incited by the media are protesting very unfair. I want to bring in now CNN's White House correspondent Michelle Kaczynski. Michelle, good evening to you. Donald Trump had a busy day in Washington today, starting with a meeting with President Barack Obama. How'd that go?
How'd that go? Maybe, I guess, as well as could have been expected. Surreal because one day prior you had White House staffers openly weeping here at the White House. Well, then today you had this sit-down meeting. So, the sense is to try to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, according to one senior administration official, at least outwardly. So you see them, somewhat awkwardly sitting there side by side, maybe stunned themselves that this meeting is actually taking place right now. And you heard Donald Trump call President Obama a very good man, say that he respects him. You didn't hear President Obama use those same words, but he did express a willingness to move forward, possibly even meet again, and sometime soon. Listen.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
We discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
At the very least, the White House wants the transition to go smoothly. I think it was very telling, though, right after this meeting in the White House daily briefing, you asked the White House, what about all those things that President Obama said on the trail? Things like Donald Trump is unfit for the presidency, that he is dangerous, that President Obama has deep concerns about things moving forward. And the White House wouldn't back away from those. In fact, they say nothing has changed and that the president meant every word that he said about Donald Trump while campaigning. Don?
He also met, Michelle, with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. What's the takeaway from those meetings?
Yeah, I mean, what was fascinating about this whole day is those were equally potentially awkward meetings, where during this campaign, you saw at one point Mitch McConnell not wanting to answer the question as to whether Donald Trump was qualified or even a credible candidate. You saw Paul Ryan at first not wanting to endorse him, then not wanting to defend him or campaign with him. Now, though, as with the White House, everybody wants to put these things aside and try to move forward. And so after these meetings on the Hill, that's what you heard from everyone. Let's get to work. Let's look at immigration, healthcare, refugees, lowering taxes, all of those things that Donald Trump talked about on the campaign trail. Now there's this show of unity, at least in trying to move forward and make some progress, Don.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate that. I want to bring in now Ari Fleischer, White House press secretary for President George W. Bush, CNN political analyst Kirsten Powers, a USA Today columnist, and senior political analyst David Gergen, who was an advisor to 4 presidents. Good evening to all of you. I'm so glad to have you on. Ari Fleischer, let's start with you. By all accounts, the meetings today were substantive as well as cordial. And tonight, Donald Trump tweeted a fantastic day in D.C., met with President Obama for first time. Really good meeting, great chemistry. Melania liked Mrs. O a lot. As someone who worked in the White House, how important is that, you know, to the incoming staff?
Oh, it's tremendously important. It's important to the nation, because especially when you have a transfer of power from one party to the next party, it's important to send a nation to a signal that we are still a united country despite political differences. And the two most important people to send that signal are the president to the president-elect, and for the president-elect to be gracious and kind. That's exactly what took place today in Washington.
Yeah. David, right after that, Donald Trump tweeted, "Just had a very open and successful presidential election. Now professional protesters incited by the media are protesting. Very unfair." What was that, a unifying message?
No, I'm not sure where the incited by the news media came from. I know there are many people around Donald Trump who have deep grudges about the press, and of course Donald Trump said many negative things about the press. And strikingly today, for example, small thing for the public, but the thing that the press kind of worries about is that the Trump forces did not take the protective pool with them from New York to the White House, which is traditional to have the protective pool travel with the president. So, you know, there are some sharp edges still underneath all of this, but I agree with Ari. The most important part of the day was the meeting between the current president and the future president. That sent a very positive signal to the country. I think it will help to calm things over time. But, you know, when he went up to the Hill, on the other hand, it's very clear now that the Republicans want to move on repealing the Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare, as quickly as they can. One of the reasons people are in the streets, and you hear this around the country now, I'm in Springfield, Massachusetts, one of the big concerns raised with me here in a public forum, where am I going to get my health care if I have a pre-existing condition? Right. I'm really scared, I'm really worried about what's going to be taken away from me.
Yeah. And those are the issues that, you know, this election was really decided on. People concerned about jobs, concerned about health care. And if you listen to any of the, you know, sort of the aftermath of this, or people talking about why they voted the way they voted, that's what they wanted to hear about. But also, I want to say, even the people who are out there in the streets, Kirsten, they have concerns. They are afraid. You heard some of the protesters voicing that now. Donald Trump could have tweeted any number of things about those protesters. He could have said, I am going to be the president for all of the people, even the people who are out there on the streets, and I hear your voice. Why tweet what he tweeted instead of something that could be more inclusive and would help heal a fearful nation?
Right. Well, look, and he tweeted this as I think most commentators today have been praising him. Even people who didn't support him have been praising him for having a very sober, respectful approach when he met with President Obama today. And it seemed to be setting, you know, setting expectations that perhaps we could see a different kind of Donald Trump. And, you know, no sooner did that conversation happen than he sends out this tweet. And it's calling them professional protesters, suggesting that the media has incited them. That's very loaded language. It's really kind of demeaning the protesters who do have legitimate complaints, and they're mostly peaceful protesters. And this is a democracy. We like protesters. We like it when people come out and express their views peacefully. And I think it would behoove him to acknowledge that and not try to, you know, kind of slander them, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of the people he may put in and talk about his message, Ari, because the feelings, as you know, as you can see, are still raw for more than half of the voters in the country who voted for Hillary Clinton. They're still raw. Everyone is singing Kumbaya right now, but CNN has confirmed that Donald Trump is considering Steve Bannon as his chief of staff. What kind of message would that send if that is indeed true? Because we don't know for sure now.
Well, I don't know Steve Bannon. I've never met Steve Bannon. I don't really read Breitbart. But I will tell you this. It will send the signal that Donald Trump is going to work in the White House with the people who helped elect him president. No surprise there. Why wouldn't he? And I don't understand the notion that it's wrong for Donald Trump to put into the White House the same people that he turned to for trust, that he turned to for confidence, who know him, know his style, know what works for him, and then he would bring them into the White House. This is what all candidates do with their winning team. Certainly President Obama did that with Valerie Jarrett and with the people closest to him. That's what candidates are entitled to do. And I understand some people are more controversial than other people, but presidents get to make those selections, and the voters decide to trust Donald Trump with the power of appointment.
Is that, David, is that the same Valerie Jarrett and Steve Bannon?
No, no, on this one I must say I disagree with Ari. Ari, you know as well as I do that White House chiefs of staff do far more than advise the president. They're the most important ambassador, or one of them, that a president has to Capitol Hill, for example. Steve Bannon has written some pretty awful things about members of Congress. He's executive chairman of Breitbart. He's executive chairman of Breitbart. Breitbart sets, is a far right a news site, and it runs some pretty tough things. It was command central, of course, for a lot of, and I understand why Donald Trump trusts him. The question is with the judgment that would be shown by bringing someone in who is seen as very controversial and very right. The alternative right is not exactly seen as as an ally of a lot of the conservatives you run with, and I just don't see you becoming a Breitbart fan.
Kirsten, I want you to respond.
Yeah, I think it sends the absolute worst message imaginable, because Breitbart is, and in Steve Bannon's own words, ground zero of the alt-right. The alt-right isn't even conservative. It's racist. It's anti-Semitic. I am not name-calling here. I mean, I'm just telling you that this is who they are. And so for him to be chosen as the White House chief of staff would send a message that not only would the President Trump not be trying to reach out and unite people, he'd actually be trying to be divisive. I mean, he is a divisive person. He may be a person that Donald Trump trusts, but that doesn't mean that he necessarily should be the chief of staff. He's also somebody who's really, as David pointed out, is very dedicated to essentially, again, in his own words, kind of destroying the Republican Party. So I don't see how that would really work in terms of trying to work with members of Congress and bringing them around to support the president's agenda.
All right, stay with me. Lots more to talk about. Ari, you'll get to respond, and we'll talk about other things on the other side of the break. While meeting with Republican congressional leaders, Donald Trump gave some hints at what his top priorities will be once he takes office. We'll talk about that next. Donald Trump meeting at the White House today with President Obama to discuss a smooth transition. Also meeting with GOP congressional leaders. Back with me now, Ari Fleischer, Kirsten Powers, and David Gergen. Ari, the big question in Washington is, what will Trump's priorities be in office? Listen to what he said today on his D.C. tour.
What are the top three?
We have a lot. We have a very strong immigration. We're very strong in healthcare. And we're looking at jobs. Big league jobs.
Now, he's promised on day one to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something terrific. Is that the right place to start, Ari?
Well, it is, Don. I think when you become the president and you ran on certain promises, and especially for the people who support you, you need to do what you said. If you're not going to do what you said, you're going to endanger your entire presidency. I think the hardest part about repealing Obamacare can be repealed as soon as Congress passes a repeal. That's a one-sentence piece of legislation. But Republicans are going to need to replace it. And I would not advise Republicans to repeal it without having the replacement follow at the same time, or at least by the same effective date. But the other things he needs to do, and I'm for comprehensive immigration reform, my position lost. He needs to take action on immigration if he's going to be a successful president, given the promises he made, and focus on the economy. Those are the three things he promised to do, and he'll need to do them. The Iran deal is the other. He said he'd oppose the Iran deal, and he'll need to take action on that as well.
David, talking about Obamacare again, to Ari's point, the repeal part, that's going to be the relatively easy part. It's the replace part that's going to be hard. And what about the 20 million people who would lose insurance? Is that what he wants to do as his first official act?
Well, in first place, I think Ari is right. He doesn't really want to repeal this until he's got a replacement that's going to be in place. You can't sort of leave everything fall apart here for several months. You can't leave a gap there. And I think the challenge is going to be that Donald Trump has laid out some principles about basically where he wants to go, but drawing up a bill is a complicated process, and there are a lot of incredibly important details. What do you do with those 20 million people? What about the kids who are living at home with their parents and are on their parents' plan? You know, what do you do about subsidies? Where do you get the money and all these things? There's some very, very thorny problems. I would think, Ari, what he would have to do is appoint some sort of action task force with a 90-day deadline to come up with a plan. Maybe you can get it started during the transition with the new HHS chief and some others. But he's got some people on the Hill who have obviously thought about this a lot. But I would think with some sort of executive congressional task force with some folks from the medical community who add in, come up with a plan. And I do think it's going to be a high priority. I happen to think his number one priority should be jobs. And I think I think it's there that he can find the most bipartisanship in working across the aisle because investment in infrastructure is a pretty widely agreed upon plan. Now there's money, question how you do taxes. There are a lot of hard questions, but I think that's really where he wants to move as quickly as he can, as quickly as the process will allow him to move.
Yeah, jobs, jobs, jobs. I think you're right on that. Kirsten, I have to tell you, what's interesting is that yesterday, the day after the election, Americans signed up for Obamacare in droves. Over 100,000 people did, just in one day, the highest total since open enrollment began. Despite the plan's flaws, and there are flaws in the plan, there are many people who need it, and parts of it are very popular. Could this get messy?
It could, but you know, we focus a lot on the people who would lose their coverage. But the thing that I think the Democrats have not taken seriously enough are the granted small percentage, but it's about 20% of the people who are seeing their premiums going up, and in some states they're going up in a way that's really crushing to people. This is not a minor issue. It's not okay to have 20% of the people on Obamacare paying basically for the other 80% who are using subsidies. So I think there are some flaws that need to be addressed. And look, the Republicans have tried to repeal Obamacare more times than I can count. I actually don't even know what the number is anymore. So they have said they have plans to replace it. And they often talk about health savings accounts or, sort of free market solutions such as being able to sell health care across state lines. But yes, they're going to have to come up with something to replace it, because throwing people off of health insurance, we know what the stories are going to be like. We're going to be covering them, the person who, couldn't get the surgery that they needed, the life-saving surgery they needed because Donald Trump took away their health insurance.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Have a good evening. See you next time. Coming up, Dan Rather joins me to share his thoughts on Donald Trump's historic election and whether the most divisive candidate in history can unite this country. My next guest has covered presidential transitions for decades, but this one may be the first of its kind even for him. We'll ask him. Joining me now is Dan Rather, host of Access TV's The Big Interview. First of its kind, you think, for you?
Well, certainly the country has not been this divided since at least the 1960s, and you might have to go back to the 1860s during the Civil War period. It's a very divided country.
What do you think of the protests we've been seeing out on the streets?
Well, first of all, they have a right to do that as long as they're peaceful and they obey the law. This is the American way. The question, I think, with what's happening in the streets is, does it sort of fade as the bad weather and winter comes in, or does it solidify around a kind of Tea Party movement of the left, if you will? Mm-hmm. That requires some structure, requires some leaders. We'll have to see whether it develops into that.
The president-elect has been saying a lot of the right things when it comes to, unity, but let's just be honest. There are a lot of people out there who aren't buying it because of his history of what he said on the campaign trail. Tonight, Anderson asked the Gold Star father, Khizr Khan, about the president-elect and his supporters. Listen to this.
We see the direct result of that un-American rhetoric, hating people, sowing the seed of division, sowing the seed of religious hatred. We want him and his surrogates to come out and calm down their supporters so that they will not continue in the mode of election. Election is over now. His supporters need to back off. His supporters need to understand that if they have won the election, this intimidation, this harassment of people of faith needs to stop, and he needs to come out and not only speak to them, but speak to the nation, speak to people and say that is not how we are going to be healing. That is not the path to reconciliation.
Do you see the president-elect doing this?
I can visualize him doing it, but I'm a long way from predicting that will happen. I think that is correct. You know, among the questions is, does Donald Trump understand and fully understand the meaning by being president of all the people? Now, one sign we'll get very early is whom he picks to be close around him, who's going to be chief of White House staff, who's going to be in the State Department, those kinds of things. But I do think that Mr. Khan is correct about this, that people can forgive, but they don't forget saying such things as, you know, the Mexicans being rapists, what he said about the Gold Star family, his mocking the person, reporter with physical. These things are serious things. And I do think, Don, that a lot of people don't realize how emotionally this affected so many people, particularly children. Yeah. That with, by no means all, but with girls, with people of color, people of Muslim religious faith, gays, there's a long list of people who want to forget what Donald Trump said, but can't forget it. Yeah. And how quickly and how well he addresses that. You know, for example, there were many school districts in which children came to school crying and emotionally unstable. I don't remember that ever happening. In some cases, they had to send out a directive from the school board or from the principal saying, listen, let's settle down. Now, it's one thing for me as an adult to say, look, it's time to be steady. Yeah. Let's be calm. Let's understand that we'll get through this. But somehow or another, this affected children more than any presidential election I've known.
It did. And I'm so glad you said that, and you're being honest about it, because it affected. And listen, as I've been saying here, you know, we have to give him a chance. There's no other alternative. He's the president of the United States, Absolutely. And if we believe in the peaceful transition of power, it should be for any presidential candidate, and we want him to succeed because if he does, America succeeds.
Correct.
But your honesty about how it affected children, how it affected people of color, gays, any sort of more marginalized group, women. This is much more than a left versus right, than going from a liberal president to a conservative president. People felt this much more viscerally, especially marginalized groups who have been in a state of depression, not just because their guy lost, but they're afraid that he will actually do what he said.
Well, this is a very important point, because down that list of people, girls, in cases, women, gays, people of color, people of Muslim faith, they do feel targeted. Now, you can say that's overstated, they shouldn't feel that way, it's unfair to feel that way, but the hard fact is they do feel that way. And again, it's one thing for those of us who are adults and particularly been around and seen presidents come and go to say, listen, this is a time, again, use that word steady, it's a time to be clear-eyed, full-hearted, and open-minded. Mm-hmm. But for the child going to school who has that sense of all of a sudden something emotional has happened, here's the point. This was not just a political earthquake, Donald Trump winning. It's turned out to be something of a psychological and emotional earthquake for a lot of people. Now, for those who are listening and say, well, wait a minute, Dan Rather, I don't feel that way. The point is, a lot of people do
feel that way.
And President Trump, the quicker he deals with that, the quicker he realizes that and deals with it, the better we all will be.
Yeah. If I call you all sorts of names, if I offend you in the way that I'm supposedly reaching out to you in my language, and then all of a sudden the next day I just go, you have to forgive me. You'll say, well, wait a minute. That takes some time, Don. You said some pretty nasty things about me. I need to process that. What's wrong with that?
Not a lot, except I would, not patting my part, but I got to know Nelson Mandela fairly well in South Africa. Remember, he was in prison for more than a quarter of a century. Right. He came out and he took the view, I can and will forgive, and I'm prepared to forgive quickly and deeply. I can't forget.
Right. It's always a pleasure.
I don't know. Thank you, Don.
Thank you so much. Good to see you. We come right back. Director Michael Moore, in his first television interview since the election, says Democrats should prepare to impeach President-elect Trump. Angry chants of not our president. Love Trump's hate being heard across the country again tonight as protesters continue to target President-elect Donald Trump. This crowd right now from Dallas, Texas, and you can see it's a pretty sizable crowd out there, and we have been watching them for the past few nights here. My next guest joined the crowd at Trump Tower last night. He is the Academy Award-winning director Michael Moore. His new movie is Michael Moore in Trumpland. We discussed this before. You were on several times, and now here you are. We have lots to talk about, but as we look at those pictures, if you can put them up now, you joined one in New York. How did it feel to be there?
It felt great, and the randomness of it, because I literally was just on my way to go speak at a documentary meeting, and I got out of the cab, and all of a sudden, a wave of humanity, literally thousands of people coming down the street, and I just joined them.
There you are right there.
Oh,
what were you doing and saying?
I'm just saying, I didn't say anything. I let them talk. There were so many thousands. I asked them how many they thought were there. They said about 10,000. I couldn't tell.
What'd they say?
They are scared for their future. They are, you know, a lot. These kids, some of the Hispanic kids that were there, they're in the DACA, you know, a program that they're worried about. Being taken out of the country. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of fear and a lot of panic amongst a lot of people right now.
I've been trying to explain that, and not to take anything away from Donald Trump's victory. But there's so much fear, and this isn't the normal fear of, you know, we're old enough to remember when Reagan was elected, and people were like, oh my gosh, it was like, you know, liberals were like, besides themselves. But it was in a different...
beside themselves.
Right, it was a different, this is completely different, and I don't really know how to qualify it.
What's scary is that you've got 77% of the country is either women, people of color, or young adults from 18 to 35. That's 77% of the country. So you have a minority, a man, a white man, over the age of 35, somebody who represents the minority of the country, is now in charge. And he has said throughout the whole campaign what he's going to do to them. He has screamed into microphones, I'm going to deport 2 million of you. We'll start with you, the criminals, the 2 million of you who are criminals in the first couple weeks. I think they're justifiably scared, and maybe if you're not of that group, you don't understand that. But I heard it out there in the street, and it was intense. And I was very proud of the fact that so many young people came out, because his presidency has to be opposed right now. His presidency started 2 days ago. That's the attitude people have to have. I mean, remember, the Republicans were ready to start the impeachment hearings on day one against Hillary Clinton.
Right.
All right? The other side needs to be ready to roll right now to do whatever needs to be done to stop his appointments to the Supreme Court.
Is that right, though, to do that?
Absolutely. You have to do it. You have to do it only because, look, I appreciate what President Obama said today. We like to see that. We like to see what Hillary Clinton said.
Such a classy family.
Yes, that's right. And you know, and it's like, you watch that and you go, that's the country I want to live in. And I thought too that President Obama and Hillary yesterday were giving a tutorial to Donald Trump, saying, you know, if we had won, this is how we would have wanted you to behave, what you should have been saying, as opposed to threatening riots in the streets if the election didn't go your way.
Yeah. When you look at him sitting today at the White House, there was, you know, just me watching, I was like, I wonder if it's what's going through his head is, what have I gotten myself into? Because he looked a little scared. I thought the same thing, but I think it was because, well, first of all, he realized this was going to be his new digs. And this is real.
And this is a huge step down. I mean, he goes in there, he says, where's the penthouse? And they said, well, there's only 2 floors.
Yeah.
The penthouse is the 2nd floor. And probably on the way over, he might have noticed that, or one of his aides told him the majority of people in Washington, D.C. are African American. So in his mind, he's processing, he's going, oh, great, I get to live in a ghetto for 4 years. I'm going to live in a ghetto. No penthouse. Yeah. This old house.
I know this brings
He's going to have to work, too.
I know this doesn't bring you any pleasure, but you predicted this would happen. And you were on my show just a couple of days before the election. You were on the show. Watch this.
Well, I live in Michigan, and so I know why she's going there tomorrow. She wasn't supposed to have needed to go there. But I think this has always been a lot closer than, I think the Trump vote has probably been undercounted in these polls. Again, in Michigan, in our primary in March, Hillary was ahead of Bernie by 8 to 22 points on the morning of the primary, all the national polls, and 12 hours later, Bernie defeated her. So I don't think you can, these polls, nobody should be sitting back, regardless who you're for. I mean, this is going to be close. Seems like it's going to be close.
I agree. The vote is still out in Michigan, but you pegged it. Not only did you peg that, you said Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. There was no blue wall. You were right on.
Well, I take no pleasure in that. I've been trying to warn people since the summer because too many of my fellow Hillary voters were doing the end zone dance on the 50-yard line.
I saw that. I saw that too.
Right?
But I also remember when he first came out and came down those escalators, and I said, you know what, this guy has a chance.
Yeah.
Especially my liberal friends, and even the conservatives, you're crazy. Right. I don't believe you. I've told this story before. I would go to parties and people, there was one guy who kicked me out of his house because I said, this guy, he had a Donald Trump, Christmas ornament and was making fun of Donald Trump. And I said, and he said, there's no way Hillary's going to trounce him. I said, you should never underestimate your opponent. That's your first mistake.
Right.
Because this guy, actually has a shot.
Clearly these liberals never saw Patton. And frankly, what you just said is absolutely true. And there were so many people that were just in their bubble because it felt good. Every time she won a debate, oh, thank God. Every time he said a crazy thing, oh, thank God.
Right.
And everybody's all gooey and warm and fuzzy inside, and it smells like cinnamon, and we're all happy. And it's like I'm trying to scream, no, folks, take this seriously. You never watched The Celebrity Apprentice. I did. Okay. I mean, this is a popular TV star, and he has manipulated people with so much BS, such a con job to my friends who lost their jobs in the factories in Michigan. And he goes there and he says, I'm going to put a tariff on those cars in Mexico. And he manipulates this, and people were buying it. And it's I don't know, it's very sad.
Let's talk a little more. Don't go anywhere. We'll continue on. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, I'm back now with Michael Moore. We're going to continue on with our conversation. So let's talk about this because it's fascinating to me that 50% of the electorate did not participate, didn't go out and vote. That's apathy. It's a myth, there was no surge of white voters.
Right.
There was a dramatic drop in black voters. But let's just put that graphic up that we had. So this is in 2008. This is McCain, Obama.
Okay.
And so the blue, obviously, that's Obama. Red. And then 2012, Romney, Obama.
Right.
Democrats voting, Republicans voting. And then Trump, Clinton. So there was a dramatic drop in the entire electorate.
Right.
But also, if you look at those blue, a dramatic drop in Democratic participation.
Right.
People were not inspired by Hillary Clinton.
A lot of people have given up. I mean, they really, there's people who probably aren't watching this because they can't even afford basic cable. People are living from paycheck to paycheck. And I know a lot of people around where I live, they've just said to hell with the whole thing. And it's like you try to say, no, don't do this, because that's exactly what those in power want you to do. They want you to stay home.
Do you think it was a woman thing? Because I'm hearing a lot of Michelle Obama 2020.
Well, that's a good idea. Can we say you thought of it first?
No, a lot of people thought of it before I do.
No,
I'm sure there is misogyny out there, and people are.
Well, of course, there's misogyny and there's sexism and he fueled it.
Yeah.
He encouraged it.
And women were excited to vote for the first woman.
And absolutely, but yes, I mean, look, Democrats have got to. When you say the word, I'm inspired by Hillary, but I get it that some people weren't. Democrats need to start running people who are inspiring, though. Why? I mean, the Republicans, they run Ronald Reagan, they run Schwarzenegger. Why aren't we running Tom Hanks or Oprah?
Yeah.
I'm serious. I mean, I don't say that as a joke. I mean, I'm really serious.
Well, the interesting thing is,
why don't we run people who are beloved by the American people?
Here's what's interesting to me, is that there are many Republicans who don't and did not like Donald Trump, but they got on the train and they voted for him anyway.
Right.
Right?
Right.
There are Democrats who didn't like Hillary Clinton. But the interesting thing is that the progressives and liberals were busy fighting amongst themselves and still going, oh my gosh, Bernie didn't get on the ticket, and they were fighting something Hillary Clinton said 20 years ago and the crime bill and all that. Yeah. That may be well and good, but they did not get behind their candidate. And in a way, I think Bernie and Bernie supporters damaged Hillary Clinton more so than Donald Trump did.
Well, Bernie didn't. Bernie was out there campaigning for her every day. I don't believe that at all.
In the beginning. before. I think the damage was done.
Well,
especially with millennials and with African Americans.
Wouldn't you agree that if Bernie had been the candidate on the ballot, he would have been the president-elect?
That's my question to you.
Well, absolutely. Of course I believe that. So I believe that because if, as you all are saying here, that this was an election about change, well, the difference between Bernie and Hillary was that one was the change candidate and one was part of the system. And if she was perceived as part of the system, I don't think she would have behaved that way. I think she would have done incredible things. Yeah. But people watching this have got to go to bed tonight remembering again, the majority of our fellow Americans wanted her, not him. She is winning the popular vote. That's who the American people agree with, Hillary Clinton. All right, because of an archaic system that we have, he is now going to be the president-elect.
I'm going to take a little bit more time. I know we're late. But can you put this graphic up from question 4 that I have here? You also say the Democratic Party failed us. You wrote an immediate 5-point plan to what to do now.
Yes.
You say that this is your Michael Moore morning after to-do list.
Yeah.
Take over the Democratic Party. Fire the pundits and the pollsters. Obstruct Republicans in Congress. Stop saying you're shocked. Repeat, Clinton won the popular vote.
Right. That's right. And we do. The progressive wing has to take over the party. The pundits are already fired. The table is empty here. Thank you. All right. So all the people who got it wrong are now gone, and we have to stop listening to them. But liberals and progressive people have got to understand they are the majority. We are the majority of this country. The American people agree with us on every single issue, whether it's equal pay for women, climate change, death penalty, pro-choice, go down the whole list now. The majority of Americans are progressive and liberal, even if they don't call themselves that.
Right.
So if it's already that way, why do we have a Congress and a president now who are not representative of the majority of our fellow Americans? This is totally wrong. Yeah. I corrected my last word there.
I'm glad you did.
Out of respect for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. All right. Up next, anti-Trump protesters take to the streets again tonight as the president-elect meets in Washington with President Obama and Republican leaders of Congress.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news tonight, you're looking at live pictures in Los Angeles. Anti-Trump protesters taking to the streets around the nation for a second night. In a tweet, Donald Trump calls them professional protesters who are being very unfair to him. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. The president-elect takes control of the U.S. government in 71 days. Today, laying the groundwork in Washington. President Barack Obama welcoming his successor to a historic meeting in the Oval Office today.
I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together to deal with the many challenges that we face.
After Trump on Capitol Hill meeting with Republican leaders. But we're going to start with tonight, anti-Trump protesters voicing their anger at Donald Trump's election. CNN's Dan Simon is in Oakland, California. Ana Cabrera is in Denver for us. We're going to begin with you, Ana. Let's start with what's going on there. What's happening where you are? What are protesters saying? What do they want?
Well, Don, they want to make sure their voice is heard. They don't want to feel oppressed, and they don't want to feel discriminated against. There are a lot of different groups here who have been offended by Donald Trump throughout the course of the campaign, and they're now marching through downtown Denver. Thousands of people who've come out this afternoon and well into the evening hours now. We've been going for about 4 hours alongside these protesters. It started at the state capitol. We're hearing some of these chants like "No Justice, No Peace," and we're also hearing a lot of other peaceful messages that are relating to other groups who are part of this crowd, from the LGBT community to women who want to express themselves and say that there is not a place for sexism in our country. We've heard from a lot of Latinos in the crowd who are concerned about the immigration rhetoric from Donald Trump. We've heard from Black Lives Matter here. We've heard a lot of chants coming together, trying to find a unified voice of acceptance and compassion. Shantae is one of the protesters here with me, carrying signs like this, "Not my president." Shantae, why do you feel this way?
We're going backwards. If we keep him in the House, we're going backwards. It's not the America that I want to be a part of, and it's not the America that I represent.
What's the message here tonight?
The message here is that the people want to be heard. The popular vote wasn't listened to, so now we're out on the streets trying to make sure that we're being heard.
What's the goal?
I mean, the goal is to get him out of there. The goal is to make sure that trans people are protected, that black people are protected, that Muslims are protected, that women are protected, and that our voice is heard. Because this is what democracy looks like.
Shantae, thanks for talking with us. Really appreciate it. There you have it, Don. Again, we've seen people of all walks of life here among the crowd tonight. Back to you.
All right, Anna, to Oakland now, where Dan Simon is. Dan, what are you seeing there?
I would echo exactly what Anna was saying in terms of the people who are at that rally where she is. You're hearing.
We can hear him. We can hear you, Dan. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. All right. I apologize, Don. I want to talk to this gentleman right here. This is Manuel Corona. You can see his sign: single father, taxpayer, undocumented, afraid. Can you tell me what?
All right. Dan, stand by. We'll get back to Dan when he fixes that. I want to bring in now White House correspondent Michelle Kaczynski. Michelle, there are several important things to talk about today. Meetings in the Capitol. First, the president and president-elect. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, this meeting was certainly not without its awkwardness, especially since one day prior at the White House, there were staff members openly weeping. I mean, looking shell-shocked. But the scene was a different world today. I mean, everybody wanting to talk about reassurance and putting the best face forward. And it was no different for Donald Trump and President Obama. I mean, sitting there, you heard Donald Trump call President Obama a very good man, saying that he respects him. Now, President Obama didn't use those same words, but you have to consider these are two people who, you know, in the prior weeks and months, Donald Trump called President Obama incompetent and very stupid, the founder of ISIS. President Obama said that Donald Trump was not fit to hold that office. And now here they are together talking about, at the very least, a way to move forward. Listen.
Most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Ms. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President. I mean, this is the way that they reinforce unity in America, that they tried to say, you know, this is going to be smooth moving forward. Be calm, everybody. This is how it's going to be. We're going to help each other make a smooth transition. But everybody also knows, you know, what was said out there was extremely and unprecedentedly cutting. There was a lot about this election that was obviously very different. I mean, one of those things was President Obama was on the trail so much. And it was pretty interesting after this meeting to then be in the White House briefing and ask the White House, what about all of those things President Obama said? And the White House responded, you know, the president feels the same way, that he meant everything he said on the campaign trail. So they weren't going to back away from it. What they want to do is just look forward, even though the gorilla in the room is that, you know, Donald Trump wants to roll back pretty much all of President Obama's policies, but they wouldn't talk about that either. The sense that they put out was that what will be, but that was America's choice, and now it's time to work on this transition in earnest.
And Michelle, and what about the meetings that took place between the First Lady and Melania Trump?
Yeah, well, there wasn't an official readout, but the White House did talk about that a little bit. I mean, there was a photo that came out of it. That's pretty much all we saw. And it did look relaxed, like they were having a conversation. And the way the White House described it is they had tea together. They went out onto the Truman balcony and looked out at the White House lawn. That's a place that Michelle Obama likes very much. And then they toured the White House and they talked about what it's like to raise children there.
All right. Thank you very much, Michelle Kaczynski. I want to bring in now CNN presidential historian Timothy Naftali, the former director of the Nixon Presidential Library, CNN political commentator David Swerdlick, assistant editor of the Washington Post, and political analyst Rebecca Berg, national political reporter for Real Clear Politics. What an interesting day, everyone. Timothy, you first. We know that Donald Trump, we know what he thought about today because he tweeted it out tonight. Here's what he said up on the screen. A fantastic day in D.C. Met with President Obama for the first time. Really good meeting. Great chemistry. Melania liked Mrs. O a lot. What's your reaction to what you saw at the White House today?
Well, first of all, both men, Donald Trump looked as if he was in awe.
Yes.
Look at him. It's as if he's thinking, "Oh my God, that scene in the scene in The Candidate saying, what do I do next?"
Right.
And President Obama is very serious. You know, remember when Trump started to talk about the rigged election, and everyone was saying you have to accept the results. Well, there's two sides. There are two sides to that, and President Obama understood he could not allow people to see him wobble or waffle, but he had to accept the result immediately. So what you had with him there was that he was being very serious and basically telling Donald Trump, this is the job you're getting. At one point, Donald Trump gave the impression that President Obama had actually talked to him about intelligence matters because he talked about high-flying assets. It's clear that the president talked to him about some serious foreign policy issues. And I think that may shape Trump's thinking a little bit about the nature of the office that he's just won.
Yeah, because he is the sitting president of the United States and has been so for 2 terms and knows what it's like to be in that office. And here's, David, I wonder if people realize when they're out there on that campaign trail and they're up on that stage, do they realize, like, if I actually get that job, do I want people to play all of that juxtaposed to pictures of me sitting in the Oval Office or sitting in a room with what we saw today? If you had seen Donald Trump sitting there with the president today and you run his words that he has said over the campaign, the length of these months, is that befitting of where he was sitting today?
In my view, look, I'll put it this way, Don. President-elect Trump said some ugly things on the campaign trail. There's no getting around that. And I think that he's got some work to do if he's going to attempt to heal some of the divisions that he helped create on the campaign trail. But now that he's the president-elect, it was appropriate that he and President Obama sat there and had this cordial sort of meeting of the minds. And I'm glad that Tim, who's a presidential historian, said that he felt like Donald Trump was in awe, because that was similar to my reaction to it. I was looking at Trump sitting there next to President Obama and not agreeing with him on policy, probably not agreeing with him on temperament or personality, and probably not that they're going to become golf buddies at some point, but looking at President Obama and seeing a guy who's been there for 8 years, who sits in that chair with full command of the office, and Trump having somewhat of a look on his face like, okay, wow, I need to step my game up. I'm about to be in charge.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying Donald Trump. Any presidential candidate. Yeah, I wonder if they think about that. Like, if they actually get to the office, when they say your past can come back to haunt you, right?
But remember, Don, this man, Donald Trump, has the least amount of experience, relevant experience of any president-elect in modern history. Right. So that office to him is much bigger and much stranger than it would have been for any of his predecessors.
Yeah, and so Rebecca, listen, he did win. He is the president-elect. The American people should give him a chance to govern, because if he succeeds, we succeed. Now, Trump said that he looked forward to meeting with the president, quote, many, many more times in the future. Do you think that will happen?
I certainly think it's possible. Look, President Obama has reached out to former presidents while he has been in office. He's actually become pretty good friends with the Bush family. We saw that great picture of Michelle Obama hugging George W. Bush at a recent event where they were all together. And of course, they've been in touch with the Clintons as well during their administration. And it helps when you're taking an office that you don't fully know and don't fully understand.
But can I say there's one caveat, though? There's one caveat. President Bush and President Obama never ran against each other. So there was never a face-to-face confrontation. Now, surely, you know, President Obama said some things about President Bush, getting it, you know, into the economic turmoil and the depression and all of that, and going to war. But they never had a chance to go head-to-head and really combat each other. Go ahead, continue on.
Don't forget, John, that President Obama went head-to-head with Hillary Clinton, and not only did he and President Clinton pretty well insulted President Obama during that campaign. It was a really harsh campaign, really divisive for Democrats. And at the end, not only did they work together, but Hillary Clinton worked for President Obama as Secretary of State. So ultimately, I think a lot of these people who do run for higher office do have this underlying sense, fundamental sense of patriotism, that at the end of the day, they do want to help the country if they can. And that's what this is about.
Do you agree with that?
I think that presidents have two switches. One is the political self, and one is the presidential self. Today you saw President Obama's presidential self. He knows that as president, he has to respect the Constitution, and the Electoral College is in the Constitution. He was political, Barack Obama, on the hustings, on the trails, trying to defeat Trump. He didn't defeat Trump. Now, by the nature of our Constitution, he has to accept the result. And so President Obama kicked in. Yeah. That's what you were saying.
Yeah. Thank you, panel. Interesting conversation. Straight ahead, the turnout of African-American voters was down slightly from the last presidential election. Did that affect the outcome? We'll talk about it next. We're back now live. Anti-Trump protesters taking to the streets tonight for a second night in a row. I want to talk about the outcome of the election with CNN political commentators Mark Lamont Hill, the host of BET News, Tara Setmeyer, Republican strategist, and Angela Rye, former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congratulations on BET. I don't know if I've told you that on the air.
Thanks.
Yeah. Very nice work. Angela, black turnout down nationally from 13% in 2012, 12% in 2016. It's such a tight election year. Did these numbers make a difference?
They actually absolutely made a difference. I think the biggest difference that we've seen is white voter turnout and who they voted for. It's been interesting to kind of watch this narrative over the last few days, or over the last couple of days anyway. They've said that Hillary Clinton failed to motivate millennials. Hillary Clinton failed to motivate minorities. And I think the real issue is that white people failed Hillary Clinton. I don't think this is about us at all. And the real issue is I wonder how they expected black people to vote after voting for the first black president in 2008 and 2012.
Yeah, and what about African-American women, though? Because they voted overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton. 94% of black women supported her. Still wasn't enough.
And I think, again, that goes to the point. So we can continue to kind of blame black voters, but I think black voters are very clearly the most loyal voting base, not only in the Democratic Party, but period. Black people turn out. And I want to remind you, Don Lemon, this is after not spending a whole lot of resources in our communities. The CBC members that I've talked to have been very, very clear about the fact that they had continually stated there aren't enough resources being poured into this election. There aren't enough resources being targeted to our constituents, and this may end up being a problem. And they said it through Tuesday, and they ended up being correct.
Mark, what about black men? 13% of black men went for Donald Trump. You didn't vote for him. You weren't supporting Hillary Clinton. You were supporting Jill Stein. Yeah. Do you regret not voting for her in a swing state because you're in Pennsylvania where the margin was just 68,000?
No, I don't. I voted my conscience. I voted for the person I wanted to be president. I was a little stunned, a little surprised that 13% of black men voted for Donald Trump, given the misogyny in his message, given his kind of stoking the flames of racism throughout his candidacy. I was disturbed and unsettled by that, and I wish.
Do you believe those polling numbers?
Not entirely, but however, whatever the number is, right, it probably was too high. It was certainly lower than black women, for Clinton or whomever, and that disturbed me. I don't regret voting Green because Hillary Clinton didn't present a platform, an ideology, or a campaign that spoke to me. If she had done so, I would have voted for her. There ultimately was a lack of resources on the ground, as Angela said. I was in Pennsylvania. I was also in Florida. Hispanic voters were targeted in Florida, not black people nearly as much. Same thing in Pennsylvania. They didn't make a commitment. They put their feet up in August.
Did you think she was going to win Pennsylvania?
I thought there was a chance she would.
So did you think your vote would even matter? Is that why?
Of course I think my vote matters. It's my vote.
Yeah.
I think. See, the problem is we like to shame people, and I'm not saying you, but we like to shame people into thinking that they voted for the wrong person, or if you don't vote this way, then we're responsible. No, first of all, the people who are responsible for Trump being president are the 50+ million people who voted for Donald Trump. And the reason more people didn't vote for Hillary Clinton is because she didn't make herself an attractive enough candidate. That's the issue here. She didn't present a platform. I didn't want her to be president, so I didn't vote for her.
Mm-hmm. Did you agree with that?
Well, yeah, obviously. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton either or Donald Trump. I voted my conscience.
And you're a Republican.
And I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. And I couldn't cast a ballot for him for a number of reasons that I've enumerated over several months right here on this network. But it was interesting to see. I think, to look at the numbers, Hillary Clinton had 5% less of the black vote this time around than Barack Obama. That's significant. But it wasn't only the black vote. She had, I think it was 5%, I believe, less in the Latino vote as well. Women, I was shocked that the gender gap wasn't larger. It was relatively the same this time around.
Here it is. This, according to CNN exit
2012
polls,
and now.
For what you're talking about,
yeah.
It was not only white men who pushed Trump to victory, it was white women, as you said. 53% of whom voted for Trump. I mean, even with all of the controversial things that he said about women, why did so many women vote for him?
Yeah, I was shocked by that, and it just speaks to what an awful candidate Hillary Clinton was. The whole historic value of the first female president went out the door a long time ago because she was so untrustworthy. The allegations of corruption, the years of being the status quo, she represented the system. And the Bernie folks on the Democrat side, and then obviously on the Republican side, the whole talk of the rigged system, I think Hillary Clinton represented that for those folks, and they could not bring themselves to vote for her. As Mark said, she didn't speak to them. But as far as the black vote is concerned, it did make a difference in places like Wisconsin and Milwaukee, where she got 70,000 less votes than Barack Obama did. In Detroit, which is 80% black, she got almost 125,000 less votes than Barack Obama did in 2012. Those aren't small numbers, and those are both two states she lost.
And some white women voted their race and not their gender. And I don't mean to oversimplify things, but they closed ranks around race here. And we just assumed that by virtue of being women, they would vote differently, given everything Donald Trump said. But they appeal to whiteness and white supremacy in this election.
Can you guys get me the, hold on, can you get me the graphic too, Marie, I'm talking to the control room, that we had earlier about from 2008 to now, the number of people who voted. But go ahead, Angela.
So I was just going to mention, I think it's not only about them voting their race, there were also a ton of resources poured into targeting white women.
Angela, if you can see the screen, I'm not sure you can. Listen, look at the number of people who voted in 2008, right? Both Democrat and Republican, blue, Democrat, red, and then 2012, and then now. The entire electorate was down.
That's right.
They weren't inspired.
That's right.
Yeah. Only
Trump didn't even get
50% of the electorate did not vote. And if you look, the number of Democrats down dramatically, but even Republicans are down as well. This wasn't the sweep that people had said. People were just apathetic about both of these candidates.
And I think that's right, too. I was going to say, I think it's important to note, this wasn't just about Hillary Clinton being an unattractive candidate, I think, as Tara put it. This is also the way in which she was portrayed in the media. This was also the timing of the release of this Access Hollywood tape. There were so many different factors in this. And what I will say about Hillary Clinton that's positive here, I know you may not agree, Tara. I think the positive thing here is this. This is a very resilient woman. After all of what was said and done, she still obtained 59 million votes. She still won the popular vote. So there's a lot to be said there about Hillary Clinton. Whether you like her or not, she's very resilient. She withstood Director Comey's involvement twice. She withstood being blamed for her husband's infidelity. Absolutely. She withstood these WikiLeaks attacks. So I think the reality of it is she's still very resident. I think there's a lot to be said there.
Hold on. Let's talk about the consequences, and then I'll let you guys discuss. President Barack Obama gave a radio interview on the Tom Joyner Morning Show right before the election, pleading with black voters to vote for Hillary Clinton. Watch.
Right now, the Latino vote is up. Overall vote is up. But the African-American vote right now is not as solid as it needs to be. And I know that there are a lot of people in barbershops and the beauty salons, and, in the neighborhoods who are saying to themselves, well, we love Barack, we especially love Michelle, and So, you know, it was exciting, and now we're not excited as much. And you know what? I need everybody to understand that everything we've done is dependent on me being able to pass the baton to somebody who believes in the same things I believe in. Right away, I guarantee you they'll dig up Michelle's garden. And they'll reverse.
That's messed up.
You think I'm joking?
No, I know. And your basketball court, too.
And they would reverse all the work that's been done.
So, watching the president today with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, how do you think those black voters who stayed home feel now?
Why do we keep going with this campaign to shame black people into being responsible for holding the American
I'm not shaming, I'm asking you a question.
But 50 plus
from the Tom Jordan Morning Show, the President of the United States is pleading the black voters. Black voter turnout was down. That's all. I'm just asking you. We've made the point that most whites in the country voted, and the people who voted for Donald Trump are the people who are responsible for getting him into office. I'm just asking you the question of the president.
No, I feel you. I'm just saying, and not that I dismiss the intellectual authority of the Time Jordan Morning Show. I'm just saying, look, I'm just saying.
That was shade. Come on.
That was extra,
that was
shade.
Not to Tom. I love Tom. It was to Don, because Don was like, well, I'm just telling you it was on Tom Jordan.
I was on the Tom Jordan Morning Show.
I know,
so
man.
that's shade.
He was shading you. He was shading you, Don.
Go ahead, Mark.
Don shade me all the time.
Right. He'll shade anybody.
Anybody. This is my point, though. Again, black people who stayed home for a reason. They weren't inspired to come to the polls. Yes, of course, some people voted Barack Obama, and it was the only election ever because he was black and they wanted a black guy to be president. But ultimately, most black voters wanted someone who resonated with their interests, their needs, their desires, and their condition. And the Hillary Clinton campaign didn't do so. So I'm wondering if the Clintons are sitting at home saying, damn, if only we had spoken to black people's needs.
But that person was on the ballot, Mark.
Yeah, but could it also be, though, that there was a portion of the black vote that was actually not thrilled with what Barack Obama's
we'll continue.
presidency
Hold that thought.
represented for them?
We'll continue. We'll be right back. So we're back now with the panel. I want to move on and talk about other things, but people don't understand that I have to get to commercial breaks sometimes. Right? And so I had to cut you off. So you were saying?
I was just making the point that we're taking for granted that there may have been a constituency within the black community that may have liked Barack Obama, but felt as though the whatever very anemic economic recovery we've had did not touch them. There were a lot of folks, black household median income was down under Barack Obama. Even Angela, you worked for the Congressional Black Caucus. There was a point where folks were saying if the economy looked the way this looked with a white president, we'd be marching in front of the White House. So that
I'm happy to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, you
guys, I want to move on.
That, but I'm just saying that we're taking for granted that perhaps there was enough of the black vote there that didn't feel that Hillary Clinton was doing enough, Barack Obama didn't do enough, and it didn't inspire them to go to the polls. 5% is a significant number.
Go ahead, Anton.
So I think first we have to acknowledge where we were when Congressman Cleaver, who was the chair of the CBC at the time, talked about marching on the White House. The black unemployment was double digits. It's always been double the national average, as you know, since they began recording these statistics.
Angela, listen, to her point, though, and that may be, you're getting really granular and inside baseball, but overall, to people who are at home, right, and they're not doing so well, maybe they just weren't inspired, even by this president, even by this candidate, people of color. Maybe it was just not enough. They're like, look, I'm not doing that well.
Or felt taken advantage of, just like he said. They didn't put resources into black voter outreach this time around.
I don't believe they did, and we know Republicans never do. But what I will say...
That's a different discussion, but I agree.
I know, but what I will say that's most important is that we deal with data, right? At some point, we have to say, elections aren't always meant to inspire. Elections aren't always meant to drive hope and change. Sometimes you just have to be transactional and handle your business at the polls. This is about handling your business. Do you really believe that this man who was just elected president, who is tweeting about professional protesters, is going to look out for your best interest in terms of jobs and the economy? Do you really believe this man who wants to be the law and order candidate is going to ensure that you're not stopped and frisked, that you're not racially profiled, that mass incarceration numbers are down?
It didn't resonate enough.
But there's another point of view on this, and I agree with you. I think you have to be transactional. Every candidate's not warm and fuzzy. You ain't got to love everybody you vote for.
At all.
But I do think for some of us, there's a short-term question and there's a long-term question. And if you feel as if the Democrats take advantage of you and they never present a candidate that accurately represents your interests, and you've already decided Republicans ain't nowhere near where you want them to be, then sometimes what you do is you either do a situation where you vote green, or third rather, or you make a situation where you don't vote at all. And I actually advocate voting, but some people say, like Colin Kaepernick.
Then people say that's why we have President Trump for you. No.
Exactly.
But
Congratulations. Congratulations, you lost.
But just let me finish the thought real quick. All I'm saying is that sometimes that short-term move is what shifts the conversation in the direction you want it to be and forces the parties to present candidates that are actual options in the next elections.
NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick made waves when he took a stance for Black Lives Matter by kneeling during the national anthem during his games. Now he has announced that he did not vote in this most critical election. He was blasted by Stephen A. Smith of ESPN, who said he betrayed his cause.
After all this noise that you made, even though you didn't intend to do so by offending our military servicemen and women, and pointing out about how you wanted to bring attention to racial injustices and beyond this in this country, to turn around and not to even take your behind to the polls to vote for a particular candidate, it is shameful. Absolutely shameful.
Okay, they said the saying goes, you don't vote, you don't get to complain. Does this apply to Kaepernick, you think, Angela?
This is crazy. So Stephen A. Smith, I wonder if he really voted after all that hollering. Here's my issue. I think that there are two very separate points. Colin Kaepernick has every right to protest and to kneel on the national anthem when he says that this does not represent my interests. There is a third verse in this song that talks about killing off slaves, of which my ancestors were slaves. And he has a right to separate choosing to disenfranchise himself as a voter. I don't agree with that strategy, but I don't think that means he has to stop protecting and protesting on behalf of Black lives. Right. I don't see those things as
go ahead.
Well,
go ahead, Tara.
I applaud Stephen A. Smith for speaking out about that because he's 100% right. I mean, he was a little over the top, but that's Stephen A. Smith with saying that we don't want to hear from Colin Kaepernick anymore. But I frankly think that if you're not going to do anything and you're just going to sit there and complain, I think what Colin Kaepernick did by not voting is a cowardly act. It's a cop-out.
But he is doing other stuff, Tara.
No, he's not.
He
not.
Is.
What? No.
He is.
If you have
I can tell you about a program in the community.
The ability one of the most precious rights in this country is to vote. And if he wants to complain about how things are oppressed, he comes from California. He had an opportunity to vote for a Black female senator, which we have not had many of in this country. There were ballot initiatives in California that he could have voted for that I'm sure he felt that were important issues like the death penalty, legalization of marijuana, congressional districting. So I'm sorry, but if you're going to sit and complain as a millionaire from the sideline of an NFL game in the greatest country in the world that's giving you that opportunity, then he should have taken his behind and voted at the polls and done something.
Gave him that
I've got to go.
God.
No!
I know. I was just about to go in.
I got to do it. Coming up. Bye, y'all. Many Americans are fearful of Donald Trump's presidency. Could he put those fears to rest? Looking at live pictures of a protest in Denver. Second night in a row since Donald Trump was declared president-elect, we have seen protests on the streets of major U.S. cities. Here to discuss now, Peter Beinart, the contributor of The Atlantic. Lanhee Chen, the former policy director for Mitt Romney. Angela Rye is back with us. And we're also joined by former Congressman Jack Kingston, a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Representative, first of all, congratulations on your win, and thanks for coming on tonight.
Don, thank you, and thank you for letting me be on your show during the campaign. I think that you provided a very good forum, and it was just an honor to be a part of it, no matter what side you were on. I think it was a good process.
I enjoyed the conversation. We had some very challenging conversations, and that's, I feel, the way that we handle this show is what you should do during a presidential campaign, especially when you're, as we said during Barack Obama, vetting the candidate. So again, I appreciate you coming on. So Representative, as you look at these protests across the country last night and tonight, do you think that they are premature at this point or understandable when you have a divided country?
I think they're premature. I think they might be burning off a little post-campaign energy. But if you look at those protests on the streets, some of the vandalism that's gone with it, some of the slurs that have come out from there, and then compare it to the tone of the Barack Obama-Donald Trump meeting, the Michelle Obama-Melania Trump meeting, the comments of Hillary Clinton yesterday, very gracious, and the comments of Donald Trump, 4 a.m. Wednesday morning, I think you're seeing real leadership take place, and I believe that America is going to watch that example far more than they are the protests.
All right, but I have to ask you then, because he is saying now that, I don't know if you saw this latest tweet, Representative, that the protests are unfair, they're incited by the media.
You know,
You probably say, get off of Twitter, Mr. Trump. You know,
well, I think the media sometimes can agitate these things, and I do think there's some, and Angela, my friend, has already jumped on me and said, no, this is all organic. But I would say that they don't have the case right now. Yes, she won the popular vote, but that's the way the Constitution is set up. We go by the Electoral College. He won fair and square. There wasn't large-scale voter fraud or intimidation or anything like that. They just don't have a case right now. It was a fair election, and they lost, and that's the way it works.
He doesn't like the Electoral College because he complained about it. Hillary Clinton doesn't either. She's spoken out against it, but in this case, you know what? It did help him, so I doubt that he's going to complain about it. But Peter, what do you make of the protests?
I think the protests are a very understandable response from people who feel that we have a president who has done extraordinarily racist things, who has called for banning an entire religion from entering the United States. I mean, if you're an American Muslim and you wake up the day after this election and you have a man who demonized you throughout the entire campaign and called for taking away very basic rights, the right to have an immigration system which is blind to religion, you want to go into the streets? Of course you should go into the streets. You shouldn't go and vandalize things or yell slurs at people, but of course you should go to it's the American right. And then the fact that Donald Trump then responds to that by attacking those people and calling them wrongly to be professional, again, it's just more evidence that he doesn't really respect free speech in the way that we'd want a president to.
Angela?
I agree with Peter. I think the hard thing that we're asking people to do is to wake up the next day after the election or day 2 after the election and pretend like everything that happened on the campaign trail didn't exist. Earlier today on Brooke's show, we watched a protest happening where a young lady wasn't even old enough to vote. She was crying, and she said, as a Latina young lady in California, saying that she was worried about her parents being deported. These are very real concerns based on the promises that Donald Trump made to his supporters. One of the things that also happened today is at a school, kids chanting, "Build that wall," in a school cafeteria today. These are real concerns.
Let's play that. Let's play that. So, and listen, Lanny, the kids do silly things, but here's the question. There are millions of Americans, Latinos, African Americans, immigrants, Muslims, Jews, women, people with disabilities who are scared about what a Trump presidency would mean to them. Again, not to diminish his win, he did win, but these are American people who are concerned about that. Not only what he would do legislatively, but also because of the angry tone that they feel that he set. So to begin the healing process, should a president-elect Trump address those fears?
Well, I think, Don, as president-elect, clearly Trump's got to take a different posture. I think he's actually done some of that. I think if you look at the meeting with the president today, if you look at some of the comments he's made publicly, even if you look at some of the substantive remarks that have come out about some of the meetings and phone calls that Trump has had with foreign leaders, I think that in all of these different ways, he is trying to turn the page. But look, you can't forget, obviously, a year and a half or 2 years of history. It's very difficult to simply say that those things never happened because they did. But at some point, you got to ask, when do we give the president-elect the benefit of the doubt? And I think at this point, people should be allowed to protest. They should be allowed to do what they want to do. But at some point, I do think the president-elect deserves the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, you should continue to fight for your principles. But at some point, you have to get behind the president. I mean, you don't have to, but you have to give the man the benefit of the doubt in order for him to govern and to legislate. Listen, we're going to continue our conversation. We're going to talk about his meetings today and the future. And then if you disagree with what I just said, we'll discuss that right after this break. 71 days until Donald Trump becomes the 45th president, and he has plenty of work to do before then. Back with me now, Peter Beinart, Lonnie Chin, Angela Rye, and Jack Kingston. Lonnie, here's Trump talking to Republican congressional leaders earlier today.
What are the top 3?
We have a lot. We're very strong in immigration. We're very strong in healthcare. We're looking at jobs, big league jobs.
Lonnie, he's promised a lot big policy changes in his first 100 days. Do you think he can make it happen?
Well, I think the fact that he's talking about it and that he's met with Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell, they're all on the same page in terms of the things he wants to do is good news. You know, they've been working at the transition now for a while. They've actually had a team in place over there working hard for actually several months. So I know there's this notion that, you know, well, they're just trying to cobble things together now. I think they've actually been working on this stuff. So I do think that they've got the right momentum in place. I think they've got good people over there. So at least for me personally, I do hope that they're able to accomplish some of the things that he said he'd do, particularly some of these conservative reform achievements that would be big league, frankly.
Angela,
retire that.
Angela, sometimes you'll see a president appoint someone from the opposite party to their cabinet. Could you see that happening with Donald Trump?
No.
Why not? Let me ask you why. Because
Come on, Angela.
I don't think Donald Trump really cares about political parties that much. I know he ran as a Republican, but there are people who don't actually believe he's a Republican because he had been a Democrat before and even an independent. I don't think he really has that much of a concern about political parties. You don't think he'd appoint someone from the other side?
Maybe an independent. I think that his memory is very long. He hasn't demonstrated yet a propensity to forgive. I know before we went to break, Lonnie was saying that, you know, this was his first day and he's done very well. And I just joked with someone. I was like, he hasn't got to Twitter yet. Let's wait to see what happens when he gets to Twitter. And sure enough, he undid all of the very presidential things he did earlier in the day. Now, when you talk about his appointments, I think the one major flag I have is that someone like Sheriff Clark would be considered as his Homeland Security Secretary, someone who I very much see as, if he's not a terrorist, inciting terrorism. So it's hard for me to imagine, even if he would consider a Democrat or someone who was left-leaning and an independent, it's hard for me to see how they would interface with that administration.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure at this point who would go into a Trump administration that has any type of progressive values and progressive priorities.
Yeah, listen, I've had my differences with Sheriff Clark on just the facts, but
Yes.
as presented. But I mean, calling him a terrorist is
No, I
pretty
said
harsh.
or inciting terrorism. If he's not one, I don't know
Or
if you
even
saw the
inciting
tweet where he was encouraging people to get pitchforks and torches, Don. That's a little much. And now today he's calling these protesters out of line, not being whiny babies, not willing to accept results. It's really not fair. It's a parsing of words. And I think, to be honest with you, there are black people in Milwaukee that would say to you that, yeah, he is very much like a terrorist. If people are afraid of Sheriff Clark, afraid of the policies of the space in which he represents, I think that's terrorism.
You can oppose his policies, but I mean, to
Domestic
call
terrorism.
someone a terrorist, I just think that's pretty strong language. But Representative Kingston, if Donald Trump appoints old political heads like Chris Christie, Newt Gingrich, Rudy Giuliani to his cabinets, how is that draining the swamp, especially considering what just happened in New Jersey with 3 of his people being indicted and possibly, going to prison? How is that draining the swamp? How is that a change? How is that throughout the establishment?
Well, first of all, on the people who were indicted on the bridge situation, most of them have said that Chris Christie did not know about it, but let's talk about that on another date, maybe.
They testified that they did, and President-elect Trump even said that he did.
Well, he is not in any trouble for it, and I have read testimony that said they didn't. But I want to talk about that at another time if we can, because your question actually is about the establishment. And while those 3 men have been part of the political process for a long time, they've also gone against the establishment. I've known Newt Gingrich for many, many years, and I can promise you when he ran for Speaker, when he introduced the contract with America, the Washington establishment was absolutely horrified. Rudy Giuliani had a lot of support from Democrats because he was a guy who had a huge independent streak. Same with Chris Christie. But as I looked around the room on Tuesday night as the votes were being counted, and I was both in the war room and in the ball, I did not see the usual Washington political class there. Frankly, as somebody who's been involved in this, it's usually the same people, different candidate. The people don't change, but the candidate does. This was different. This was a different crowd. A lot of independent businessmen. One of my friends from Georgia, a guy named Kevin Jackson, came up because he was so enthusiastic.
I got to go. I know
it.
Kevin Jackson, but I have to go. I'm sorry. I'm out of time.